All right, y'all. Y'all already know what it is. This is the Jasmine Yvonne show where we build collective conversations in conversation with amazing people such as Omari Love. I'm super excited to introduce y'all to Omari Love. If you don't know who Omari Love is, maybe I should let you say for yourself because you do a lot of things, but definitely a music artist, tattoo artist, a phenomenal writer, and just a really cool human being. Do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm a multidisciplinary artist, and I specialize in mostly writing, tattooing, music production, and I'm a huge advocate for self-care, self-love, and mental health, and things of that nature. Loving thyself, loving thy neighbor, and love in general.
And so at 18, you had moved to New York. You grew up in St. Paul.
St. Paul.
We share that experience, like having gone to the same elementary and stuff. And so let's just start with like, what made you decide that you wanted to move? And how did that play on your individuality?
Well, initially, I felt as though I wanted to further my career because I was tattooing at the time and things of that nature. I wanted to become a writer. I wanted to pursue my career as an artist. I wanted to become like famous and rich, and I wanted to be like successful. But the longer I spent in New York, I realized that there was something that I was looking for that was far more fulfilling than like success, because success is something that's it's so finite. It's also so superficial, you know? And like while spending time in New York, I realized that I was searching for myself, and that's played a huge role in my individuality and where I am today. And yeah.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to read some of your writing, and one of the things you said was that there's so much more to life than just pursuing a career.
Yeah.
And so how has that manifested in your life? What are some of the areas outside of pursuing music that have really just brought you some joy?
Taking care of myself, like exercising, writing, and also writing and creating not for others, not for an audience, but for myself, like simply. And that's a really important thing too, because I feel like a lot of people put all of their attention towards their career and towards their job and towards work, and then they miss out on what truly matters, which is spending time with loved ones, spending time with their children, spending time at the beach, spending time just taking care of themselves, you know. And my grandma told me something that I'll never forget. She said that she has like all of the money that she could ever have, you know, like she has everything that she could ever need. She has a house, she has everything. She could buy anything in the whole entire world, but something that she doesn't have is her physical health, because she spent so much time working, you know. And she worked so she could eventually retire. She worked so she could have money, and now she doesn't have the health, you know. So like, what does that money even mean? And I try to express that to people. I try to put that into perspective.
Yeah, it's really crazy because I'm actually reading this book. I've been trying to get more into reading just because I feel like I've been spending so much time on social media, and I started to notice some of the negative effects that came from it, just like consuming. And one of these books talks about like, for the first time in our economy, we're at a point where the more wealth you acquire doesn't necessarily guarantee happiness.
Exactly.
And so that puts a lot into perspective because I think I've talked about just on a different interview about how we get so caught up in like the way that things are fed to us, like, and then we fall for these traps and think that once we get there, it'll be exactly how we saw it. And so I really love that you had that experience of figuring that out now rather than later. Yeah. But I am curious because I feel like with that conditioning that we see of like people being rich and flexing and then like desiring that, how are you able to differentiate between like your voice, like this is what Omari wants, versus just like the way you were conditioned?
I like to look at other artists and throughout the course of time, throughout the course of history, like people who I really admire, such as Whitney Houston, such as James Brown, such as Michael Jackson, such as Amy Winehouse, such as Kurt Cobain. And they were all like, or a lot of people, not them specifically, but a lot of artists, they find themselves desiring success. They find themselves desiring things that are trivial, you know, and they end up destroying themselves, you know, because they didn't realize the most important thing, which was taking care of themselves, you know, and also like putting themselves before their audience, putting themselves before the record labels, putting themselves before their fans, and like putting their family first. And I feel like that's something that I'm now realizing it's very important that I put myself first, you know. And I know exactly like what I would have to do to reach like success, but it's something that I'm not really ready for yet because I'm not 100% comfortable with it myself. And I feel like a lot of artists, a lot of rappers especially, they find success at an early age before they're ready for it and before they know what they truly want, and then they destroy themselves. And there's a whole audience to watch them do that. And that's a really sad thing. And I don't want that. I want to take care of myself. And if success comes with that, then that's good, I guess.
Man, you raised such like an important concept because I feel like people ask for things before they're actually ready, like you just said. And I think people forget that like there's so much at play, just like things we can't even see, like the universe, right? I'm not even trying to get all into that, but like I truly feel that the opportunities that we receive at the times that we receive them is a reflection of what we're ready for.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I would love to get into that too, because I'm a strong, firm believer of the universe and vibrations and energy. It's all really important, you know, manifestation.
yeah, and I just feel like, yeah, I think like, again, when we focus on these ideas of like where we should be, we fast track and manifest that before we're even like, we have to go through a developmental process to be ready for some of these building blocks that we want. It's not to say like, I totally believe that you have the potential to like be an A-list star, but you already have the awareness that like, if you stepped into that before you felt ready, the fall would be very hard.
Yeah, I see a lot of people fall from grace. And I like to tell myself this, I like to tell other people this, it's about the process. It's about the journey. It's not about the destination, you know, because if you don't appreciate the journey, if you're not paying attention to the journey, and if you're not present, if all you focus on is the destination, then when you get to that destination, whether that be to have all the money in the world, like abundance, whether that be to be famous, like despite what that destination might look like, or if it's to move to a different country, or if it's to have a specific career, once you get to that destination, if you don't appreciate the journey, then you're going to find yourself miserable. And to me, like, there's a lot of superficiality about success and like this idea, and also like what is success, because success is very subjective to the individual, and like you said, wealth is very subjective to the individual. But if you ask me, like, knowledge is wealth, love is wealth, like becoming one with ourself is wealth, and mastering ourselves, that's what real wealth is. Because, and I know people who have all the money in the world, you know, and they're pretty miserable, you know, like they go to the club every single night to escape themselves because they don't really care about what they think they care about, because it's all a matter of what's been fed to them by like social media, by the government, by whatever the external forces may be.
Yeah, because it's all like mind manipulation when you really think about it.
It's
and
crazy.
I think like, you know, saying that taking care of yourself, I feel like those are the steps to building a better relationship with yourself. And I feel like when artists, especially music artists, when they don't have a strong sense of like connection to themselves, they get easily swayed by all of the temptations that exist within that realm. I think back to like this cringy time when I was in like a 3-girl like rap group, and every time we had a show, somebody was always offering us drinks, always offering us drugs, every single time. And so like, when I could imagine for people who continue to climb that ladder, like the temptation only rises.
Exactly.
And Yeah, I think like I'm sure you have experienced that just in I noticed like because I like going to like EDM events and I just like when people DJ, you talk a lot about how like music has brought people together.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think on the flip side of that, sometimes people are brought together over certain vices that have just become so normalized in society.
Yeah,
Can you share your
definitely.
thoughts around that?
Definitely. I think that music definitely brings people together, and raves bring people together, and that's a very beautiful thing. That's a very, I'm not going to say positive because I think that good and bad is irrelevant, but I'm going to say that there's always a polarity. There's always like a duality to everything. There's always a contrasting aspect, you know, like there's like, yes, like music brings people together and you meet people, and yeah, it's a very it could be a positive thing, but also like on the other side of that, the other side of the polarity, there is a very real force, which is substance, which is alcoholism, which is neglecting to take care of ourselves, especially in New York, because the lifestyle is so much different. In New York, it's like, and I have a lot of friends who do this too, but they will go, there's like 24-hour parties and things of that nature, and they'll go from like club to club. They'll be on like 2 hours of sleep. They'll be neglecting to take care of themselves. And also, like, while neglecting to take care of themselves, they're neglecting to take care of their responsibilities. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to be brought together. It's a beautiful thing for music to bring people together. I love music. I've been making music since I was 13 years old, and it's beautiful. I love music. But even for myself, I've recognized how like this force, which is like substance abuse, which is very cultural too. Like drinking is very cultural. We see it every single day. We see it everywhere, you know, and we're always celebrating something, especially as Americans. We're always celebrating something. And I feel like people love to indulge too. And like, that's human nature. We all have vices. But what I realized within myself is I have to create very strong boundaries around that. And I can't, like, at this point in time, I can't stay out all night. Like, if I go to the club, I'm there for an hour, I come back home, because it's very real. I can't ignore like the prevalent nature of substance abuse and things of that nature, and like very like toxic lifestyles.
Yes, but I like that you said boundaries, because I think like a lot of people, again, it's the peer pressure, right?
Yeah.
And I had just went to this really cool event. It was like an Afrobeat DJ night, and I had bought so I'm not going to put anybody on blast. So I'll just say I bought a mocktail that was kind of trash, and it was really overpriced. And so I was just like done buying stuff out for their night. So I didn't have any drinks at this event or anything. And I remember this girl, she was like, "You didn't have anything to drink?" And I was like, "No, I don't want to spend any more money." And she was like, "You're going at this sober?" Like, she was so shocked. And it's just like, it didn't click for me. Like, it really clicked for me in that moment, how normalized, like, it's almost not normal to be sober out in like these kind of spaces anymore. And yeah, I remember just like looking, because I used to be a person that fell into peer pressure a lot, especially with alcohol, like going out. And I just thought, like, I don't know, I would just trick myself into thinking that I was uncool when I would reject these things. And really, just like looking back, I probably embarrassed myself and didn't show up in my best way. And yeah, that really takes self-security to be able to say no to these things when like everybody else around you is saying yes.
And what's uncool is liver damage and the prolonged effects that substance and alcohol and sleep deprivation has on your body, you know. And I think that, and I've had that response as well, like while going out sober, people are surprised. They're like, "You're not indulging? I can't believe that. Like, that's crazy. Like, that's unheard of." But I think it should be normalized to be able to go out completely sober, and to have a group of friends to be completely sober with, or even like, and not even just completely sober, like maybe like just a night where you're not going overboard, you know. And there's nothing wrong with taking substances. There's nothing wrong with drinking, but I think that there has to be balance. And like, if you're doing it every single night, or if you can't go out without taking substances, if you can't go out without drinking, then maybe you should go a little while without going out, you know.
Right. Like, do it because it's your truth in that moment. Like, do it because it's a true desire of your own and you understand the repercussions, not because somebody said it's cool or your friends are doing it or all of this external stuff. It has to come from an internal desire. And I feel like that's everything in life. Like,
Exactly.
I feel like we get, especially like growing up for me, and I'll let you share your thoughts on this, but like, I don't know if it's because I was raised in Minnesota or whatever, but I kind of grew up as a people pleaser. And so as a result, I felt like my voice kind of like became more muffled as I grew. And it took me a lot of time to be able to like recognize what was coming from an internal place versus like what was externally just making noise. And yeah, I think like the biggest learning curve has come from like once I began listening to my own voice and recognizing that like, okay, not everybody really vibes with like what I have to say and like who I am, and just getting acclimated to that sense of rejection, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I can imagine, especially for somebody like you who is more in the public eye, like you've been doing more modeling and, oh, I love to see that, but like you've been doing more modeling and you've been sharing more of your thoughts. Like, do you have anxiety around just like this sense of rejection versus being accepted?
I have anxiety around being perceived, I would say. Not necessarily, at this point in time, not being rejected, because, you know, I've made it this far and I've made it this far on my own accord. You know, I did everything that I felt and I followed my own intuition. I don't have a fear of being rejected because I know like no matter what I do, there's always going to be someone out there who relates and like someone who can identify with me and someone who I provide validation to just by existing. So at this point in time, I don't fear rejection. And I'm also like, I can accept rejection too. Like, it's okay to be rejected because we all have differentiating viewpoints. Like, we all have different perspectives, and that's what makes us human beings, you know? So
I love that. And let's talk a little bit about how when we went to high school, your music was more on the rap tip.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I've been listening to some of your new projects, and Ghost Movies is my favorite song currently. But I've noticed that you've shifted more into this alternative realm. Can you talk a little bit about that evolution for you?
Well, when I first started making music, I was strictly making music so I could expand people's vibration. That's why I wanted to make music. I wanted to make music to enlighten people. I wanted to make music to help people align their chakras. And essentially, that's what I was saying. That's what I was telling to myself when I was 14. But what I realized is that I really wanted to make music so I could help people find themselves. I just didn't have the words for that at the time, you know. And before it was rap, like, and I still consider myself to be a rapper, but that's only because I didn't realize that I could do anything else. Like, I didn't feel as though I could sing. I didn't feel as though I could produce. And then eventually and shout out to West End Ghoul too, because West End Ghoul literally showed me like the foundation of production. I didn't even know how it worked before meeting West End Ghoul. But when I realized that I could produce, then it created a whole new realm for me. I realized that I could do more than just boom bap. I realized that I could do anything. I realized that I could make trap music. I realized that I could make rock music even like down the road. I realized like Ghost Movies. I realized that I'm not like there's no box. Like, I don't have to be restrained. Like, I could do anything. Like, I could do all of it. And that's kind of what led me to where I am musically now. Like, I can do anything. And my grandma told me something. Shout out to Linda. She told me that diversity is the spice of life. And that sticks with me a lot, and that reflects in my music a lot. I love everything. I love all music. Like I love every single genre, and I listen to everything, and that comes out when I record and when I write music and when I produce music. But yeah.
And so you had some themes going in your most recent album. Can you talk a little bit about why you titled it that?
The
first?
Flower That Grew from Blood.
Yes.
Oh. Well, basically, it's a nod to Tupac. And also, like, I didn't realize this. It was, like, very unconscious for me. But Nina Simone has the Strange Fruit song where she talks about the roots having blood on them, like, of the trees. And she's talking about, like, slaves hanging and stuff like that and lynchings. But the concept of a flower growing from blood is something beautiful that comes from pain. Like, and pain is inevitable, and that's Buddhist philosophy. Like, pain is inevitable, but suffering is based on how we deal with that pain. So that's what the flower that grew from blood is. Like, something beautiful could come from pain, you know. And like, blood represents pain, and also blood represents growth. Blood represents birth. Blood has a lot of different representations. Blood is, and we all bleed too. Like, that's the one thing that we all have in common. Despite our race, despite our culture, despite where we come from in the world, we all bleed. We all bleed red. And the flower, there's something beautiful that could come from even pain.
And so I know, just like having been dabbling inside of your music journey for a while, pain has definitely been a theme. And I can imagine with like your desire to enlighten, because pain is one of those concepts that I feel like people try to suppress because it's too much to deal with. I'm curious if there have been any realizations that you have come to just going through this concept of pain and coming to the realization that it's inevitable.
Yeah. There's no way around pain. That's what I realized. I realized that pain is necessary for growth. Like, pain is a signal that we feel in our body that lets us know that something must change, or that we should focus on that pain so we could figure out how to heal that pain. And yeah, my perspective on pain now is that there's no way around it. And like, no matter what, in every single area every area of our life, there's pain in relationships, in work, and everything. Like, there's no way around pain. And I think that pain, I have it tattooed on my fingers actually. I think pain is everything. Like, there's no way around pain.
And isn't it weird? I don't know if you've noticed, but the more that you resist pain, the more pain is caused.
Exactly. When you don't acknowledge that pain just festers, and it worsens. When we don't pay attention to that pain, like, let's say we sprain our ankle, if we ignore it, then that could become worse, you know. Or if like we're having like headaches every single day, if we don't focus on those headaches, then it could become something worse, or it could be something worse that we're not paying attention to. So
yeah. And I feel like, I mean, obviously, like, we both have a physical vessel. We have like a physical body, but like everything is made up of energy, right? And so like, pain is a source of energy that sometimes we hold inside of our bodies. And so in what ways have you found a release?
Definitely through expression. That's the most important thing to me, is expressing myself and expressing the way that I feel. Because if I don't, then it, as I was saying about pain, it festers. And when it festers, and I have this analogy, it's like a jar. Like, if you have a jar and that jar continues to fill up with pain, or like whatever the emotion may be, eventually that jar is going to explode and it's going to make a mess, you know. So it's important that we release from that jar, we take out of that jar, or else there's going to be an explosion. And expression is a huge form of release for me. And right now, exercise is also really helpful. And just anything, writing especially though, like just writing like what I'm thinking and what bothers me and like what I would change, or like anything really.
Yeah, and if y'all haven't seen Omari's writing, y'all definitely need to just tap in, because Omari, you're a really great writer, and I think that's what makes your your music just so powerful. And I'm curious because, you know, going back to this notion of like holding pain in and it causes festering and then like the release being self-expression. I wonder if that correlates to like, I don't want to say that you were unhappy like coming up in St. Paul, but I can definitely like get the impression that you feel like more yourself, like having left your hometown. And I'm wondering if there's a correlation between like that realization of like, I need to be set free for who I am, that was kind of like causing you pain growing up in our hometown.
I think it's painful for anyone to continue a cycle, you know, if we don't. And to me, the most important part about traveling is just like seeing how other people live and just like experiencing the world, experiencing a different reality outside of your own, you know. And I have a lot of family members, like my dad, for instance, he's never left St. Paul, you know. And I feel like when I look into his eyes, I could see a lot of pain that comes from that, you know. And for me, I felt like it wasn't that I had to move, it was just that I had to experience something new, and I knew that, I recognized that, or else I was going to be miserable, you know. And like the world is huge, and like when you leave the country you really see just how big the world is. So like why, and I have whole generations of family, like my great grandmother is still alive, shout out to Betty. She never left St. Paul, she's been here her whole entire life, you know. And I feel like there's just so much that we're missing out on when she's also been all over the world too, but she mostly has been in St. Paul. And then my grandmother, Linda, has been in St. Paul her whole entire life, like most of my aunts, like most of my cousins. But now they're realizing, and I think me seeing my aunt leave, she moved to Atlanta, shout out to Tiffany. I think that really inspired me because it made me realize that I could leave, and also, like, I don't have to leave forever. Like, I could leave temporarily and just experience something new and see the ways that other people live. It's important. And like I was saying, like, our differentiating opinions are what make us human beings. And like our differentiating lifestyles, cultures, viewpoints, languages, food, music, everything. That's what makes us special as human beings. And I think the problem with the world is that we want others to be just like us, like, and we sometimes have a hard time accepting anything, especially with like parents too. They have a hard time accepting that their children are different than them, or that they have different viewpoints than them. And I think that's a big problem in the world. I think what we need to work on as human beings is accepting one another's differences.
Yeah, and I think it comes from like how we've defined this life experience. Like, I ultimately, just like going through life, I feel like life is so short.
So short.
And it's like we spend so much time, like you said, perpetuating these same cycles of just getting up and doing the same things. And like, while if that brings you fulfillment and that's how you want to spend your life, like, go for it. Exactly. But like you said, there's a whole life to see out there. And it's not just like, again, going back to what you said about moving space, but it's about expanding your narrative and your perspective and your experience. Yeah. And the only way that we can do that is by, I think a lot of people get caught up in like the fear of just like associating themselves with these elements within the cycle, like whether that's, you know, getting up and listening to the same music or getting up and partaking in the same habits. But like, I truly feel like if people just chose to do one thing that they never would think about doing once a day,
could change their life.
They would be so different.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you said that if a person finds fulfillment in just doing the same thing every day, then like good for them. But like, how could you know that you're fulfilled if you haven't tried anything else? Like, how do you know that that's fulfillment? Oh, and like, there's a difference between fulfillment and being comfortable, you know. Exactly. And I feel like a lot of people get stuck in this cycle of comfortability. And I think comfort and like the idle hand, the idle mind is the devil's playpen. Like, we shouldn't be comfortable. Like, we should always push ourselves to like further extremes. And like, that doesn't have, I don't mean like go jump off of a mountain. I mean like anything. That could be like trying a different job. That could be trying different foods. That could be doing something different. Like if you're a musician, like maybe like dabbling into a different genre. If you only listen to this style of music, maybe try listening to this style of music and like watch how it changes you, you know? And like you said, like doing something different every single day. There's this book, it's called Atomic Habits. Changed my life, changed my perspective. And he talks about in the book, like in a nutshell, he says like 1% every single day will like enhance the quality of your life. Like just like doing just like 1% more every single day, and like starting small atomically, and just like little changes make a world of a difference in our lives.
And it's crazy because shout out to Georgia Fort, but she said this phrase, this quote that like really threw me through a loop. But she said, oftentimes right before you're about to experience a breakthrough, there's a lot of resistance. And that makes me think back to like, you know, you coming to this realization that like pain is inevitable, because I feel like anytime you properly go through pain, and by pain, I should say resistance.
Yeah, definitely.
Anytime you go through resistance and you soak up all of the lessons, whatever it is that's supposed to come from this resistance, there's a release.
Yeah, no,
there's
definitely.
the reward.
Yeah.
And so like when you said comfortability, because I've been thinking about this a lot, like for me, for you, it was moving to New York that like shaped your thinking around like wanting to be famous and all these things. For me, like I was super career driven, and that's what I wanted to do, like just conquer the world, like no matter who or what it costed. And then like I had my daughter, and then like my whole priorities kind of like shifted, and I started to value more like family time and relationships. And I think it's, with that being said, I still have goals. But I've noticed there's been a lot more resistance to pursuing those goals. And it's been very easy to just say, I'm just going to work a job and, you know, like have my happy family and whatever. But I've just noticed like in my life that when you push past that challenge, that moment that like causes you to face your fears and like aspects of yourself that are needed to shed in order to let you shine and be more refined. It's beautiful. And I only raise that because like I was just sitting here thinking about when you said pain is inevitable, and I was like, but does that have to be a negative thing? And then I thought about it, like pain, I think we associate it with negativity, but there's a lot to gain there.
Yeah, no matter what. Like whether we see it as negative or positive, it's essential. It's inevitable. It's essential for our growth. And resistance is something that comes naturally when considering growth, you know, because once you shed your skin, once you shed a layer of your skin, you don't get that skin back, you know. And like once the caterpillar metamorphosizes into a butterfly, the caterpillar's done. Like it's now a butterfly and there's no going back. And I think a lot of people fear becoming that butterfly because we have to think about what that means. Like once we become a butterfly, that means people revere the butterfly, you know. And like it's a very daunting idea of becoming our true self, because that also means that we might not have the friends that we had before. Our family might not look at us the same because we've tapped into our potential, and that's very intimidating for a lot of people, because especially for people who haven't, especially for people who are scared to become butterflies. And so it's a very daunting thing, and it's like no matter what, there's going to be fear. And I think fear is also essential too. Like there's no way around fear.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think like what you were saying is like there becomes too much to lose. Yeah. And I think that's what people are afraid of. Like when you expand, and especially when you step into your authentic self, I think people you gain yourself and you lose all the things that are not for you. And I think
Exactly.
sometimes people would rather hold on to those things that are not for them because it creates this superficial sense of security,
Yeah.
but at the expense of themselves, right?
Yeah, no,
And
exactly.
life is just so complex. I feel like there's so many layers to it. And I guess I'm just curious, like, 3-year experience, and obviously, like, we still have time to live if the universe allows, but like, what do you think is at the essence of life? What do you think is the purpose?
I think the purpose of life is love. I think like I think that's the foundation of every religion. I think that's what the Bible, the Quran, I think that's the message that is trying to be communicated, but we have misconstrued it because we are always trying to calculate things, you know? And like some things don't have to be psychoanalyzed, you know? Like some things are just simple. And to me, like the purpose of life is love and being there for one another and treating everyone like your family. Something I learned at J.J. Hill Montessori, shout out to that school, is the golden rule, which is to treat others how you want to be treated. And I think that if you ask anyone what they really want in life, outside of money, outside of material, it's love. We all want to be loved. So if that's the case, then why not love one another? And why not treat the person who works at the grocery store as though that's your uncle? Or like, why not treat the person who drives the bus who's bringing you where you need to go as your mother or father? And why not treat like a complete stranger on the street as though that's your cousin? Like, and why not extend that same empathy, the empathy you would extend for your cousin or for your sibling or for your son or for your daughter? Why not extend that same empathy to a complete stranger? And why not, like, again, why not try to accept one another's differences? To me, the purpose of life is love and continuing to spread love and to continue and growth. Like, life is about growth, and life is about discovery and discovering what it is you like, what it is you want, what it is you want to do, what it is your intentions are, what it is you don't like, you know? Like, to me, the purpose of life is discovering purpose, and that's the simplest way that I could put it. It's all about love, though. To me, that's everything. Love and forgiveness and letting go of the ego and just becoming one with love, and also surrendering to love. Because when we surrender to love, when we surrender to our heart, when we follow our heart, everything else evaporates, and it becomes clear what we truly need and what we truly want and what we truly care for. Because work, career, that's not love. Like, there's no love in a 9-to-5. Like, there's no possible way to find love in a 9-to-5 because that's not natural. We're not supposed to do that to ourselves. We're supposed to take care of ourselves. We're supposed to spend time with our families. We're supposed to nourish ourselves. We're supposed to nourish one another. And I think that, yeah, to me, the purpose of life is love, like, sincerely.
I love that you say that, because that's definitely a high level thought that I feel like has been recited by so many of the greats, so many high level philosophers, so many monks, so many spiritual gurus, like, that love is at the essence of all existence, and also that service is at the essence of all existence. And I think that that's directly connected to love. This act of, like, because I love you so much, even if I don't want to genuinely do this, because love is at the forefront of my priority, I'm going to serve you. And I feel like at the beginning of society, that's where it was kind of like, you know, like, I have these fruits, you bring me this hay, and we exchange, and, you know, partaking in the natural ecosystem of the world by giving and giving from like not expecting something in return, and just trusting that the universe will reward you in that way. And
Exactly.
I feel like, honestly, the concept of love is, like, definitely being attacked currently, just like within our society. And I think about how many movies I watch that show me what love is supposed to be, and then like getting in relationships and being like, something's not right. And ultimately, like, thinking even as far as frequency, like science, literal science, I think people get like, they get really weird when you bring up terms like frequency and all these things, because spirituality has become this concept that people resist. I'm not sure why, but
it's all intentional. I think that's what the algorithms want to kind of put down, like Instagram and social media and the people who control social media. I think they don't want us to realize the importance of love, because then we have no purpose for using social media anymore, because social media is not a loving place. Social media is designed to keep us lured in, to keep us complacent, and to keep us away from love, to keep us away from our spirit, you know. I used to always talk about the fiberglass screens when I first started rapping, and like how our phones like keep us out of touch with our spiritual selves. And it's true. And also, I think to expand on what you were saying about like this idea of love that's promoted onto us, I think that through like movies and cinema and things of that nature, and social media, even books, I think the problem with a lot of people and why a lot of people don't find love is because we don't have a clear definition of what love is. And Bell Hooks, in her book All About Love, which I think everyone should read, she quotes Eric Fromm in his definition. I believe Eric Fromm, but you could do your own research. You could read the book. But basically, she says the definition that really spoke out to her about what love is willingness. And love is willingness. You have to be willing. Like, you have to be willing to put the work in to love. And also, like, to expand on what I was saying about work not being love, I don't entirely agree with that. I think that the 9 to 5, the traditional work schedule, is not work. Because like you were saying, like love, like labor could be an act of love too, but like not the labor of like sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day. That's not love. I think love is like willingness. Like, I think willingness to trust, like willingness to also surrender, you know, like willingness to let go of one's pride. And that's what gets in the way of love. Like love, and Bell Hooks also says in her book, she says love and abuse cannot exist simultaneously. And I think that a lot of us, especially Black people, we grow up with parents who treat us in ways that are not acceptable, that should not be acceptable. And they tell us that it's tough love because they want to teach us like a lesson. They do this because they love us. But in reality, like love should be like, love is like an infinite energy source, you know. And like, I don't think that love and hatred could exist at the same time. Like, 'cause if you love someone, you can't hate them.
Right. I feel like love is the highest frequency that like exists for mankind. And I even think about like our heart, like it being the literal heart chakra, the literal like connection to like this physical realm.
Right.
And I mean, I don't identify as religious because I don't believe in like separating myself from like all these different people because they interpret things differently. But one of the things that have been consistent is that like this energy of God is love. Yeah. And so exactly. I think a lot about like how that exists within all of us. And anytime you're like in tune with that inner state of love, like, I just have not met anybody who was exuding that didn't feel good, that didn't like make my face light up, that didn't just radiate like God energy. Like,
yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, you see it in anyone who preaches love. Like, you don't see them complaining. You see them living in the fullest state of love. Like, you see them emitting love. Like, it's beautiful. Kendrick Lamar, on his Damn album, he says, on the song Pride, he says, in a perfect world, I'd make schools out of prisons. I'd take all of the religions and put them all in one service. And I think that's so important because, as I was saying, I think a lot of people overlook the actual foundation of what religion is about, which is love. Like, that's like point blank period. Like, it's that simple. And I think like the Bible that we know and that we have access to was rewritten by colonizers because they wanted to indoctrinate people and control people. And that's the thing about organized religion. Most of the organized religions today aim to indoctrinate and control people. But in a perfect world, I think that we could take all of the religions and all of the information and all of the knowledge, all of the sacred texts, and we could put them all together and come up with like one concrete idea of what enhances the quality of everyone's life. And like it all ties back to accepting one another's differences, even if they have a different religion than you or if they share a different belief system than you. And I think that's so important, is accepting one another's differences.
I think one thing that you're raising that I think a lot of people overlook is that the power of human existence is like, we don't even understand. We've been so suppressed for so many generations that like we literally can't even comprehend our abilities on just even an individual level. Like, so on a collective level, I could not even imagine, like my brain can't even wrap around it. And I think that that's why there's all these systems of indoctrination, because collectively, if we came together and put our brains and our primal like superpowers, which I believe have been suppressed through all different, like we won't even have to get into all that, but I think people forget that they have a source of infinite power within them.
Yeah.
That if you can just tune into, can literally it would be absolutely crazy. And I think I've been trying to do that, like just within my own life. With first, again, like you said, getting in tune with myself and beginning to hear my own internal thoughts more, and rethinking a lot of these conditions that I've obviously experienced, and also self-expression. I was talking about it in a different episode, but that I believe that humans' destiny is to create. And that's why I love artists, and that's why I especially wanted you to come here, because you speak a lot about how your artistry has opened you up as a person. And I feel like just by being you and just by spreading those messages, you're inspiring people to be led back to the natural essence of why we're here. And so yeah, I guess that's a little affirmation, but I just feel like right now, even we're here creating magic that somebody can take and think about and repurpose and regurgitate and spread, and that's love.
Exactly. That's beautiful. That's creation. That's expression. Yeah. No, I think that another purpose of life is creation, to whether that be procreation, whether that be art, whether that be planting crops, whatever it may be, it's all creation, And
that's the willingness you were talking about with love. Yeah. It's all interconnected.
Yeah, exactly.
As it should be.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Omari.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
You should let people know where they can tap in with you.
Yeah, well, you could find me on Instagram at Omari Bleeding Love, OMARI Bleeding Love, because I consider myself someone who bleeds love and the flower that grew from blood. I don't have Twitter. I don't have TikTok. I don't have any other social media platforms. But you can find me on SoundCloud at Omari (bleeding) (love). And I'm on all streaming platforms at Omari Love. And yeah, let me know what you think of my songs.
And if y'all haven't listened to Ghost Movies, I'm biased, but that's definitely my favorite song. So I definitely recommend checking it out, just because I think it shows another element to Omari that I think is really beautiful. And yeah, this is the Jasmine Yvonne Show, and I'll meet you halfway here next week on Thursday at 7.
I also want to give a shout out to my brother, Elijah, who goes by Withering, who is the best witch house producer in the Midwest. Yeah, go check out their music.
Go check out Elijah.
Here comes the bass. Feel the power. Feel the beat.
Yo.